Hey everybody, it's Amanda, and today I'm making pie. Well, the crust anyway. All right, so I have some time today. I have some things I need to use up in my fridge, and I decided to make some pies. I never make just one pie. I always make multiple pies because when I make pie crust, I'm gonna get flour all over this counter. It's kind of a messy job, and I'm like, if I'm gonna do it, we're gonna make a lot of them at once. I got the oven going anyway. So on today's agenda is definitely a chicken pot pie and probably a pumpkin pie. I think it's fall. I think that's the direction I'm gonna go. But in this video, I'm gonna show you how to make the crust because I make lots of pies. I'm pretty good at it. And yeah, so the crust is something I'm actually super proud of. I've been making them for years. It's a very simple recipe, and I don't use any major equipment. I pretty much just use my hands. I do it kind of an old-fashioned way. So let me show you the ingredients, and we're gonna make some beautiful pies. I'm even gonna show you how to flute it the way that I do. So let's get going. Okay, so the ingredients are super simple. We have flour, which I keep in a bucket. You need 10 2/3 tablespoons of butter, which is essentially 1 stick and 2 2/3, and you just kind of estimate it, tablespoons from your second stick. And I will say you can use unsalted or salted. I don't find that it makes any difference in terms of what we're doing here, but this one is salted. The other thing that you need is some salt. I'm gonna use kosher salt, and you need some water. So we are going to get 2 1/4 cups of flour. I keep it in a big bucket. Whenever I get a bag of flour, I just dump it in this bucket. And for me, it's a lot easier to go ahead and do it this way because then I'm not kind of trying to dig my measuring cups into a big paper sack of flour, and I find it just makes less mess. So I like having this bucket, and if I make a lot of pastry, I'll even keep this bucket in the fridge, assuming that I have space, because for me, then, you know, if you're making pastries, like especially like a pie, it's better if everything stays cold. So there's my 2 1/4 cups of flour. So now we're gonna need 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And I have this 1 teaspoon measure. I'm just gonna pour it in here and get it to where it's mostly full and then dump it out. It doesn't have to be super exact, it's just kind of general. As far as the butter goes, I'm gonna take this butter, this is really important. You want to open this up. You want to cut this butter into smaller pieces, okay? Let me move this so you can see. I'm just going to take my knife. I'm cutting it into thirds. The long ways, we'll flip it over. We'll cut it in thirds again. And then we'll cut it across because I want small cubes because we're going to be breaking this up, okay? Now that I've got these cubes, they're going to go right into this mix, except first before I put the butter in, I'm gonna stir this up real fast. I do want to incorporate that salt in with the flour before I toss that butter, and I don't want you to have a really salty spot in your pie. Okay, now that we've done that, we're tossing these cubes in, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and cut the other butter into cubes as well, and then we're gonna toss it in. Okay, so once you have the butter in the bowl, it's gonna look like this. And this is where you're just using your hands. This is why we need no tools. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna break up the butter. You're just gonna smear it in your hands and break it up within the flour until all of the butter is broken up into little tiny pieces. They always say pea-sized, but you just want it kind of small and kind of incorporated throughout all of the flour. And what this is doing, I mean, butter here is the fat, right? We're gonna spread that fat out so it gets all melty and it kind of incorporates this flour, and that's what's gonna turn it into that nice, soft, supple dough that we want. So what makes this process different is that we're not using any tools. You know, right over in my corner, right behind my dishes are clean sign, you can see that I have a food processor, and you could certainly do this in your food processor if you're inclined, maybe if you don't have any hand strength or something. There's also a pastry blender that you can use if you want to keep your hands clean. But I find that, first of all, I find this very soothing. The flour feels really soft and nice, and the butter is, you know, it's kind of just fun to squeeze it and spread it. But this is how you would do things if you didn't have any tools, and I find that even though it gets my hands a little messy, honestly, making pie is kind of a messy process once you get it all incorporated and you are rolling it out on the counter. You know, there's some touching involved. You've got to feel it, and once you start putting your hands deeply in it and you start getting the literal feel of what the flour should feel like, what the dough should feel like, it makes it a lot easier to make these things without worrying about a recipe and if you're doing things the right way. This is how your grandmother would have done it. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and keep mixing this up. It takes just a couple minutes. It's not overwhelmingly difficult, but I'll show you what it's like as soon as I get all of this incorporated. Once you get to where you feel it's mostly mixed up, I don't know if you can see what this looks like. Let me bring it a little closer to you. Look at that. It almost looks like sand, very sandy. There's some big chunks, but nothing too big. You want to break up anything that's too big. But once you feel like you're at a good place and it's mostly broken up, then we're going to add our final ingredient, which is water. Now, they say in most recipes that you should add 10 tablespoons. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I have done this so long, I never measure it out. But if you're trying to do this, start with 10 tablespoons. I basically just go to the sink and put some water in, and I mix it up with my hands until it's the right consistency. So I'm gonna show you how I do it. Start with 10 tablespoons, and when you get the right consistency, that it's gonna be an easy rollable dough, that is when you are going to start working with it. Because you may have different circumstances that require more or less water. So anyway, let me go ahead and put the water in, and we will see what we can do. Okay. That was probably more than 10 tablespoons. But I'm gonna mix it up. I don't think I put too much in. That might just be the right amount. So you can see as we add the water, it's gonna start to come together into a ball. And one thing I want you to know is when you have the right amount of water in, you have to mix it up, because it's going to look like it's not enough water. Like there's still gonna look like there's a lot of dry flour in your bowl unless you mix it up. And if you put in too much water, then you run into a problem. It is a very delicate balance. So you can see now that I mixed it up, it is starting to come together in dough balls, but there's still a lot of dry in there. So we're gonna add a little more water. And I'm gonna be very gentle this time and try to get it mixed up. Okay. You can see that was just like a little tiny bit. Okay. Now, what I can tell you is, let me see if you can see that. I know you're backlit, so it's a little hard. This has mostly come together. So what I want to do is I want to actually go over to my counter now, and I'm going to dump this out, and I'm going to try with both of my hands, because right now I'm just using one, to put this all together in a ball of dough. I might need to add a little more water. I might need to add some flour underneath, but it's just, I just want you to see there's some dry floury parts and there's some doughy parts. It doesn't look like it's all coming together, but it might be. We're gonna put it on the counter and see how it goes. Let's see. All right, so this is how we're gonna do it, okay? Well, first of all, I got my flour over here. I'm gonna take a little handful. I'm gonna dump it out on the counter. We're gonna spread it out because we're gonna dump this onto this flour to keep it easy to use. Okay, so I'm gonna put everything out onto the counter, and now I'm gonna put it all together and try to make it one dough ball. Okay, and once you start putting it together, you can see how there's plenty of moisture. Even though in the bowl it looked like it needed more water, that there was a lot of dry left in it, it really didn't. It really didn't, because there's a lot of moisture in this. It just needed to be incorporated. So Once you get the feel for it, it'll work. That's why I'm saying just take it a little bit at a time, and then when it's still dry in the bowl, but also coming together, go ahead and put it on your counter, try to squeeze it together, and that is when you will see how much moisture is really in that dough, and if you need more or less. I think this is why people struggle with pie, or certainly pie crust, because it is a very delicate thing, and you have to try it, and you have to put your hands on it, and it's not the same recipe every time. It's something that you have to get a feel for and understand how it works. But it's not that complicated that anyone can't get the hang of it fairly quickly. Okay, this is coming together. You really, because this is a pastry crust, you don't want to handle it more than necessary, because you're going to melt those good fats that we incorporated with all that butter. We don't want to melt it. We want it to stay cool in here as much as possible. So, like I said, I'm going to spread this out a little bit. I never make just one pie. I always make more than one. So I'm going to divide this into 3. Because for me, this should make 3 crusts. Okay? I'm going to put a little more flour down here. We're going to roll it out. And we are going to flute it. And that's going to be it. So we're going to be ready. It actually comes together pretty quickly. So let me get my pie pan. Okay, I'm going to throw a little more flour on my counter. I'm going to put a little bit on my rolling pin. We're going to take one of these dough balls, and I'm going to start rolling it out. My pie pan is over here, and we're going to eventually put it there. But I'm going to move it out of the way for now because I want plenty of space to roll out my pie. Okay, there's some loose pie here. So, and what I always do is I go one direction, and then I will flip it over. Make sure I put the flour underneath so it doesn't stick, and then we will go the other direction. This roller really needs some flour on it. And the goal is just to keep rolling it in the opposite directions until it is the right size to go over your pie pan. Okay. Knowing the size is something you get a feel for. I think this is probably big enough to go over top of my pie pan and line it. So here's what you want to do. And I'm going to do it this way just in case for you. I don't always need to do this, but you want to pick it up with your rolling pin. See how I did that? You have it flat, you just pick it up over the top, and it should hold together. Then you're going to lay it right over top of your pie pan, kind of straighten it out. Lift it up a little bit so it gets seated in those, I would say corners, but it's round, it's not corners, but in those crevices nicely, and that way you have it set in well, and you can have all your filling fill in all the way to the edge. This is the one tool we are going to use. Really, I guess the rolling pin's a one too, but we're going to take a butter knife and we're going to go around the edge and just cut off the extra pie crust. And basically I'm just chopping straight down. I don't need any of the extra. We're going to save that. We might use it for another pie crust. We might use it for pie crust cookies. But anyway, this is our pie crust. It's in its basic form. Now I want to show you how to flute it, and that's just what makes it pretty. So let me get you a little closer. Okay, so here we have our pie crust. And in order to flute it, you're just going to use your fingers. This is the way that I do it. So you're going to take your thumb and you're going to push it inward, and you're going to take your other 2 fingers on your other hand and push it outward. So you're making this motion. Okay, your thumb is going in between those 2 fingers. And we're going to do it all the way around. So as soon as this side ends, I'll stick my one thumb there and I'll put my other thumb inside of it and press it. See how we're getting that nice edge? Then I go where it ended again, stick it in. Let me bring it around a little bit better so you can see it from here. My thumb will go right at the end of that flute. My hand will rest right next to it, and I'll take this thumb and push it in. And we're just gonna go right around. Again, my thumb rests right next to it, my finger there, and I'm gonna push right in between, okay? And as we go around, just following each edge and pressing, see a little extra there, we will get that pretty fluted edge that makes your pie crust look so nice when it bakes in the oven. You just keep spinning it and pressing your thumb against it. There are certainly other ways to make your pie crust edge pretty. This is just my favorite way to do it. I think it always looks nice no matter where I go. When you get to the end here, it gets a little tight, so sometimes you can make one big flute. This one's actually kind of close, so I'm gonna make one big one. There you go. If you had a little more room, you could have made two smaller ones. But look, here we go. Look at this. A perfectly fluted pie crust in just a matter of minutes. And this is ready to go. Okay, so here we go. We have a beautiful fluted pie crust and it's ready to go. I do want to mention that if you are doing a pie with a top, like I'm going to do my chicken pot pie here in a minute, you want to not flute the edges until after you put the filling in, and then you put the top on, and then you flute the edges if you want to make it beautiful. So that's how you want to do that. But for this one, we're just going to have this sitting and ready, and this is probably going to be my pumpkin pie. So you have to look at those on my next video. But anyway, pie crust, super easy. Check it out. Yeah, make yourself a pie. It's fall. What better time for pie than fall? All right, well, let me get to making my other pie crusts, and if you have any questions, let me know. But that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for being with me. I'll see you next time.